Now we're looking at the manufacturing sector. Despite its prospects, it has had to battle infrastructure gap for many years, taking its toll on the investment opportunities we have here at home. The manufacturing sector in Nigeria, according to an NASG report, attracted only $11.56 billion between 2019 and 2020 from a total investment of about $46.4 billion. This is representing about 25% investment within the period under review. But with the pervading awareness that things will not remain the same in the post-pandemic era, the manufacturing sector is faced with more complications to the manufacturing processes and operations. Joining me now to discuss this and more, I have the former Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Chijioke Ekechukwu. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Now, looking at the narrative of manufacturing in Nigeria seems to still be the same, from infrastructural gaps and issues here. Take, for example, power, access to forex, access to raw materials, the area of value addition. The narrative has remained the same decade upon decade. Why is it difficult for us to really surmount all of these challenges? It's simplistic in its note, but difficult to implement.
Yeah, the first reason I can adduce for our inability to resolve this matter is lack of political will. When we have the real political will to resolve the issues of manufacturing, which should be a major hub for the growth of our economy, then that will drive us into making certain concerted policy statements that will actually reform the manufacturing sector. I don't seem to be seeing that political will happening in this country. For countries that really have tried to drive their economy and drive them positively, you will see certain policy statements that will be made by the heads of their various governments, and those statements will be geared towards, you will see that those statements are concerted towards growing the manufacturing sector. But we don't see such statements happening. Even if such statements are taking place, we don't see enough actions to back up such statements. For example, we have seen a lot of factories and a lot of manufacturing companies shut down, major ones. And today we are saying we are not generating enough revenue through taxes, CIT, that's company income tax, and all that. If we have additional 100 companies today in this country, additional, doing very well, you can imagine the kind of revenue that will come from these companies. So what efforts have we made? I expect that the country should be able to go back to these countries. If you know Kaduna very well, and you know the number of textile factories that were shut down in Kaduna, and many in Lagos, and many in Kano. If you know that a company like Dunlop Tires used to exist in Nigeria, Michelin Tires used to exist in Nigeria, and they're no longer existing, have we ever taken note of why these companies went out of business? So until we take actions of even finding out why they went out of business and why they shut down, and then we'll go towards solving the problems of why they shut down, then we can't be seen to be serious with solving the problems of manufacturing sector. So those are the kind of things. You have already mentioned a good number of them. Those problems are still existing up to today. So until we are serious with making manufacturing a major of our economic growth, then we won't get it right.
And also looking at the fact that we're still dealing with the impact of the COVID-19, the manufacturing sector has taken a major hit. Irrespective of the recovery we are seeing gradually picking up, it's still difficult. Now, a bigger challenge for state government, businesses and large corporates is that cost-cutting measure. At the end of the day, the operational cost of the average manufacturing outfit is quite high. How then do we now begin to adopt cost-cutting measures and still retain staff if we still have this elements here to deal with, and we are not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. So it means at the end of the day, the transfer cost is going to be on the average Nigerian who has to purchase. How now can we begin to reduce the cost of average products, from shoes to bags to edibles and much more, before thinking of exporting?
Yeah, first of all, we need to identify all the cost elements and all the cost areas that are making the cost of production high. Number one on that table is the FX, exchange rate. And we know that exchange rate has actually been a major contributor to the prices of goods and services, and also a major contributor to the inflation rate that we're experiencing today. And so if we take it aside and say, okay, exchange rate is the number one problem, is there anything we can do to ensure that manufacturing sector gets the exchange rate at a different rate, or if there's anything we can do to push down exchange rate and so that Naira can have a better value? Of course, once we do that, we'll be sure and certain that our own manufacturers will be able to compete favorably with imported goods. One of the greatest problems of manufacturing in this country is the fact that imported goods come in cheaper than the ones manufactured locally because of a myriad of cost elements that are inhibiting manufacturing flow, and of course creating so much cost for us. So we need to identify that FX rate is part of it. We also need to understand the fact that infrastructure is a major cost of this cost. And so if infrastructure is it, what do we need to do? And if we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about power. The power Nigerians have been talking about in decades, many decades. So if that same problem exists today, is there anything we can do? Yes, there are things we can do. We can have what we call industrial park, have a mighty area of existence for different factories to exist. Of course, that's what the export processing zones try to do, but of course, in their own, they try to reduce the costs arising from import duties and other duties. But when you have an industrial park, you are going to be having shared facility costs. In other words, every factory within the industrial park will actually share from the cost of electricity, share from the cost of water, share from the cost of other things. And of course, we have to also look for other avenues to provide power to them that is cheap enough, and all of them will share from the total cost. If we do that, and we have an industrial park where different factories are going to have their various factories, you see that all those costs that were incurred and handled by individual separate companies can now be shared by the aggregate factories that are within the industrial park. That's just one way to go about it. And all these things actually can be handled either by the private sector or by the government. But without the effort of government, such things cannot happen. And so government must actually map out things they want to achieve in order to make manufacturing a major hub for the economic growth.
Dr. Ekechukwu, I like the fact that you made mention of industrial parks, free trade zones, the sharing of resources in order to cut down costs now. But looking at the agenda of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the body language of the federal government and also state governments not necessarily taking action, looking at waivers and incentives to ensure that we have a much more robust platform and investment for our manufacturing sector. How does this put us in a very unfavorable position if we are not too careful in the short term, looking at the whole lot of prospects that we ought to strategize and take over with the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement? If we're not careful, we are going to lose the markets to others. Take, for example, the West African corridor. It is glaring as it now. How much of an action do we have to take?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we are just not in competition with only the West African corridor. European countries and Western world are also using the corridor, the West African corridor, to bring in their goods. Of course, what they need to do is just to have an anchor within the West African corridor, and from there they will move. Because cost of production is cheaper in those places, we have some kind of stable government policies in some of these countries, and so they establish their factories in those places and then bring in their products into Africa's largest market and Africa's largest economy. Nigeria is a target of every manufacturing company or every country actually in the world, because when you talk about population, Nigeria has it. When you talk about the economy and the free flow of funds, Nigeria has it. So the target of every person coming into African Free Trade Zone area is just to be able to get Nigerian market. I can tell you, we have experienced such number of people coming through their various embassies, speaking to us to say we want to come into Nigeria, and so that's the interest, all of them. But for us to benefit from the provisions of this, we need to be sure that our own products are also competitive outside in terms of quality, in terms of pricing, and in terms of technical expertise in getting all these things done. I do not know how many people that even understand the African Free Trade Zone trade area, and I don't understand whether we all know how to benefit from the existence of these trade treaties and charters. And so there needs to be more and more awareness campaign by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Trade and Investment or Trade and Industry. We need to keep talking about it, and we need to have strategic efforts, make strategic efforts towards making sure we take advantage of this market that has been thrown open to us and against us. So we need to take advantage of it, depending on the kind of decisions we take going forward.
And how much of an effort do you also expect us to put in terms of research, value addition, and also standardization?
Yeah, like, when I started speaking, I said we need to, in fact, right now we need to have desks, offices, or probably departments within various necessary MDAs, focusing on these particular trades that must happen across our borders. Now, to the extent that if we have to make inquiries or have anything to do with that, we know who to call. Right now, if I have any inquiry to make concerning that kind of trade inhibition or trade effort I want to make, I won't even know where to call. I don't even know what desk to call. So we need to have departments within necessary MDAs that will handle issues concerning arising from them. And whoever that's going to man those departments must be very knowledgeable about what's going on, and must be people who are willing actually to work for the growth of this particular effort of Africa.
And now let's also look at the role of agencies, like you've also highlighted, the investment promotion part of it, and also export commission as well. How then do we now begin to synergize to create much more awareness in the area of value addition, in the area of standardization, in the area of identifying our area of comparative advantages, and also putting in as much effort? Yes, we have documents like the Book of States, but those are not enough of incentives if we are not having the body language of subnational states taking these conversations much more seriously in synergy with these agencies of government like export promotion and then investment promotion.
Yeah, first of all, what we're lacking in the entire process of making sure these things work is synergy. We don't have synergy between one MDA or the other. We don't have that synergy where we're going to be having interrelated actions from one ministry to another, from one MDA or one department to another. We also do not even have synergy between the federal government and the state governments. I mean, when you're talking about trade agreements of Nigeria and other African countries, the states exist in isolation. In isolation because that's what they have chosen to do. In isolation because they have not been carried along in most of the things that have happened. Many times you also see that in carrying them along, the state heads or governors may say, oh, this is coming from one party that is not our own, so we're not going to continue with their policies. And so these are kind of synergy we're not getting. We need to continue to have those kind of synergies where the states are in synergy with the federal government, in the policies of the federal government, where one department is in synergy with the next department that is necessary for taking these actions. And so this synergy can actually come from top, dovetailing from top to down, where certain committees must be set, and the people are given timelines to achieve certain things, and then there will be a check to know results made and within a period of time. So if we don't do this, you see, government must be run like a private sector. Why would private sector exist and do well? Once you take the same action in government, it will not do well, just because government does not want to run like private sector. We need to be result oriented. We need to be very pragmatic, and so we need to be able to measure our results from the targets that we have set. So these are the things we need to do, and I don't see that commitment and seriousness actually from the side of government yet.
Dr. Ekechukwu, I like your use of language here where you say we need to be target-oriented. Now, wrapping up our conversation now, lastly, now we are seeing the 2022 appropriation bill under scrutiny. We are seeing the proposal here being discussed, and as well, the accompanied document, the Finance Bill 2022, is also going to be presented latest by the end of this year, so that we are able to take action fast enough for the year 2022. But looking at the finance bill now, what sort of tax waivers or new additions do you expect will help propel the manufacturing sector, whether it is for those who are within the large corporate sized entities or for the small and medium sized one? Tax waivers are one of the biggest conversations we are having globally to ensure that we have a faster propelling element to recovery.
Yeah, you know, the issue of tax with as related to manufacturing sector has always been on the front burner, and organized private sector kept on talking about the proliferation of taxes around businesses in Nigeria. That problem still remains and is still remaining. Okay, let me give you an instance of what happened just today. A motorcyclist supposedly working for an institution was stopped, and this motorcyclist is just like a rider for delivering things, and he was stopped, and they said, "Where is your operational license?" That was the first time I was hearing such a thing. Operational license. This is a motorcyclist or a company that has had license for everything, motorcycle license, everything. But he was still stopped by some towns on the road, and they called it operational license. Is it to operate the motorcycle or to operate the company? Nobody knows. You know, so the issues of taxes must be a serious business for this country, because discussions on tax and the proliferation of taxes has been on and on. The actions to be taken have not been able to drive any result. So we need to look at that and ensure that government, as a matter of policy, must take concerted effort to make sure we streamline the taxes, and everybody should know what taxes it should pay, and not local governments and states and municipal area councils coming up with all kinds of taxes, and they will put certain laws that nobody even knew when they were promulgated. So we need to be serious with it.
We need to take things seriously. Thank you very much for your time on the show today, Dr. Chijioke Ekechukwu. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we hope government is listening to take action. It's time to take action. And like so many say, talk is cheap.